This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the hottest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. It is a pre-Thanksgiving edition of the pod, and my co-host, as usual, alongside me this afternoon and this week is the Doc from Doc and Jock. That is John Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, always great to check in with you. Always look forward to talking baseball. Great hour of the week. What's going on with you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm getting ready for the Thanksgiving holiday. And I have some stuff to get done for the Free Press, some other stuff to take care of because of the holiday coming up and being on Thursday, so I have to get some stuff done earlier for the Freep than usual this week, and adjusting, getting everything done that I have to with that being said, and now we look forward to, well, the Tigers and the winter meetings coming up in December, but first and foremost, the awards were announced, Major League Baseball awards. The biggest one to note regarding the Tigers is the AL Cy Young Award that Justin Verlander did not win. And
Why?
Many people cried and cried all night long because he was left off of two writers' ballots. And shamefully so, because he deserved to be on every single ballot. And he was a top 3 finisher, finished number 2 right behind Rick Porcello, that is, the former Tiger starting pitcher, who is now on the Bo Sox, and he had the wins going for him, but some people, such as Brian Kenny of MLB Network, would like to kill the win. I don't think it means anything, and I don't think it really means a lot either when you look at the Red Sox's lineup and run support for Rick Porcello when he started every 5th day for the Red Sox this season. And it was a lot of runs per game. Verlander, not so much. So imagine if Verlander would have gotten the run support that Ricky P got in Beantown this past season. If that would have been the case, Doc, Verlander would have easily had 20, if not would have exceeded 20 wins this past campaign. So he deserved to win it. And the thing that is more of what caused an outcry is the fact that he was left off of 2 writers' ballots. And one of the guys, Bill Chastain, left him off the ballot, and I believe put Zach Britton, number 2. And if you look at the website for the Baseball Writers Association of America, the organization that does vote for these awards, such as the AL and NL Cy Young Awards, well, you'll see that Zach Britton, the closer of the Orioles, who was magnificent all year long, he finished number 4. Kluber, the guy that I picked to win the AL Cy Young, finished number 3. And that was a big time surprising to me because I thought he deserved, if not to win it, to finish number 2. And I guess we can't get all up in arms regarding the fact that he finished number 3 when, maybe he could have finished number 2 and deserved to finish first because he still finished in the top 3, and he's won the Cy Young before. And maybe that hurt Verlander as well, Doc, because he has won the Cy Young Award before as well.
Well, what's interesting is that in other sports, like I think NFL Football Hall of Fame, they don't disclose who voted where. Right away, Major League Baseball, Twitter was a buzz in that they revealed who the names were. Tony Paul on Twitter kind of said, hey, thank you, Twitter. This is what these are the 2 guys that we need to look at in terms of not putting him on the ballot. If they didn't have to put him in first place. If they had just put him on the ballot at number 3, 4, 5, he automatically wins. He received the first place votes. It upset everybody, but a lot of people also took the stance that, listen, it's just a postseason award. The most important thing is team awards and team standing. And Justin Verlander, whether you got excited or not regarding whether he won or not, he had a great season. We need him to continue that success. And if he's going to remain on this Tigers team, he's got to perform just at that level or even better going forward because he's going to be looked at as the ace or the number 2 going forward on this staff. And if it works out and he stays on his ball club, Zimmerman, Verlander, Michael Fulmer can put you in a competitive situation if you surround them with a good bullpen and a better lineup and a better group of talent. So if the award ceremony, it got the Cy Young got a lot of buzz because of Kate Upton as well, in that she fired off a tweet that kind of let people know kind of the nature of their relationship. I didn't think that they were actually doing it because they're not married. I didn't know they were doing it. Did you think they were doing it?
I was very surprised because people don't have sex before marriage nowadays. Never. So I was like, wait, they're doing it? No way. That's not possible.
And the tweet that got, at this point in time, as I'm looking at it, 72,248 retweets. It's hey at MLB. I thought I was the only person allowed to. Justin Verlander. What two writers didn't have him on their ballot? And needless to say, she kind of indicated that her and Justin not only take pictures together
they also do a little bit more. They do some of the dirty, too, behind the scenes. Don't they?
That was a classic tweet. That ranks probably, I would say, top 3 tweet of 2016. And that's why I love Twitter, man. She just got out there and supported her man. I give her credit. I don't have a problem with it. I just think that maybe, just maybe, she could have used better vernacular to kind of...
Instead of saying F right? Saying something else maybe, but to fire off a tweet such as that shows her anger, her creativity with that tweet, and she knew she would rile up the nation, and she really did. The whole entire nation, the whole entire world retweeted, favorited that tweet. It was that big of a deal when it came out, and because her man didn't get the Cy Young Award when she thought he deserved it, and a lot of people as well throughout the nation that watched baseball thought JV deserved to win, and especially when he got all those first place votes and didn't win the award. And Porcello and Kluber were the only two pitchers to appear on every single ballot of the AL Cy Young Award voting by the Baseball Writers Association of America. And just to sum this up for all you guys out there, the BBWAA, so the Baseball Writers Association of America members vote for 4 annual awards. They are the AL and NL Cy Young Awards, plus the MVP award in each league, the Jackie Robinson Rookie of the Year award, which Michael Fulmer got in the AL this season, and Manager of the Year. So they vote for those 4 major annual awards in Major League Baseball per season. And they submit their ballots before the start of the postseason. So think about this. Porcello wasn't great in the postseason. Verlander didn't make the postseason. Now, Kluber was pretty darn good, including in the World Series, until that Game 7. Kluber might have won it. That might have put Kluber over the top if playoff results were counted as well in the award voting. So Kluber, I would say even more than Verlander to a certain extent, and this is really being pushed under the rug, Kluber almost got more robbed than JV. You almost have to agree with that, even though JV had all these great numbers, including leading the American League in WAR among pitchers at 6.6 according to Baseball Reference. But Kluber was right behind him at 6.5. Wins Porcello had with 22, but like I said, you kind of can kill the win at this point. And then in whip as well Verlander led in, but Porcello was right behind him. So Porcello and Kluber were right behind Verlander in some of those categories. But I think what put Porcello over the top was that he had all those wins, had 22 wins. And that was 6 more than Verlander. And Kluber, though, he got 18. That's why I still say Kluber deserved, no matter what you think about the wins and how you quantify them, because I don't really hold them in high regard. But still, Kluber, I would say, deserved it more than Rick Porcello. And I would have been fine with Porcello finishing number 2. I think him winning first when Verlander left off of 2 ballots and received at the same time all those first place votes, maybe would have won the award if he would have been on those 2 ballots that he was left off of. I think, with that being said, that Porcello winning is not the biggest thing to really to look at, or JV, all of that. I think it's more about Kluber, but I know the travesty with all that, because of what I said about Verlander, what everybody else is saying about Verlander, they're saying that's the biggest travesty. I think it's really Kluber. I think at least a semi-travesty. So what do you say? Because, I mean, Kluber had the great season, but remember, and what he did in the playoffs, though, because he was great enough in the regular season to win the award. And what he did in the playoffs would have put him over the top, but remember, those don't count. So, do you think it's a travesty, at least a semi-travesty, with Kluber not winning? No, I'm not going to say it's a full-fledged.
No, I would say that the competition was between Verlander and Rick Porcello. The part that's upsetting everybody is it's not the fact that these writers voted Justin Verlander like 8th, 9th, 10th. They left him off the ballot. If they just include him, Verlander wins the award. So it makes you look at what these writers are looking at, and 2 Tampa Bay writers, it makes you look at what's going on. Did they have a personal vendetta? One came out and was like, I struggled significantly with it. What did you struggle with? If you have a struggle, vote him 5th. It really goes to show you that sometimes these writers are out of touch, and they do things that are really out of the ordinary. And that's why sometimes, fans and people in the media will critique and really lash out. But I think in Major League Baseball's best interest, looking at that, they should probably keep the votes private, because I'm sure these 2 writers got a lot of unwanted tweets, unwanted phone calls.
You sent a tweet to Bill Chastain, one of those guys from the Tampa Bay chapter of voters. And as you said, how the heck did it end up being 2 Tampa Bay guys? Do they have a vendetta against Verlander? And that's why Buster Olney came out with an article himself about why voters shouldn't be able to vote for these awards. And he's a writer himself that is able to vote for those awards, such as the AL Cy Young. And he was critiquing these voters. And I think a reason to critique them is the fact that they do have vendettas at time. And because of the guy, maybe his mannerisms, his character off the field, such as Verlander. Maybe they don't like the fact that he dates a supermodel, Kate Upton, and they're jealous of that almost. Or they think he's a narcissist. Is he cocky? Is he overly arrogant? I guess Verlander kind of gives off that vibe to some voters. And then some of these voters, including the likes of Bill Chastain from Tampa Bay, MLB.com's Tampa Bay Rays beat writer, he's a guy that doesn't see Verlander up close that often. And a lot of these guys in the American League that were able to vote for the AL Cy Young award, well, these writers don't always see these guys up close and personal. They don't know how good they're really doing. But still, at the same time, you put them on the ballot. And you can put, by the way, for the Cy Young Award, there are 5 spots on the ballot. So he could have been placed 5th, Verlander, on both of their ballots, and should have been. It just comes down to this. The pure principle here is that Verlander was so good that he definitely deserved a spot in the top 3 of the AL Cy Young Award voting. No doubt about that. And I think at times these guys that hold these vendettas against players, well, not at times, but all the time, they shouldn't be voting then. Because you can't hold a vendetta, and you can't not vote for a guy because you don't like how he is maybe off the field. Because he's dating, Kate Upton, or because he's overly arrogant. You know what? That's not a good reason. It's not a legit reason for not to vote for a guy that was as good, as standoutish as JV was all season long for the Tigers, who would have been nowhere without his production. And maybe it hurt him that he has won the Cy Young in the past and won the MVP the same year that he won the Cy Young in 2011. Maybe that hurt him a tad, but it should not have hurt him as much as it apparently did. And that's why Kate Upton came out and supported her man big time. And now, I wanted to ask you, well, my first one is about Porcello. Do you think he won because of all the wins that he garnered with the Red Sox?
Dude, look at his numbers. He had solid numbers all season. This is a guy that formerly pitched in Detroit. He obviously at times struggled. He was a little bit inconsistent. But remember, people kind of critiqued that trade. But in the end, the Rick Porcello, going to Boston helped the Tigers in a certain way. And what I look back on is when you look at that, Rick Porcello was able to win the Cy Young and the season that he had. Dave Dombrowski had faith in him, not only with the Tigers, but with the Boston Red Sox. But I look at the fact that how is it that you have the Tigers? You got a rotation with David Price, Justin Verlander, Rick Porcello, Doug Fister, and you have such 3 Cy Young winners and Max Scherzer. You have solid pitching, and you don't get over the hump. It's just disappointing to look at. And you go, my goodness, when you let go of David Price and you let go of Rick Porcello, you did get some stars back, and it's nice that in the end we're looking at Michael Fulmer now, and he's probably going to be the star pitcher of the future. And I think his ceiling is going to be higher than Rick Porcello's. But looking at it, Rick Porcello, give him credit, is a guy that is a consistent ground ball pitcher. And at Fenway Park, which is known as kind of sometimes a hitter's park sometimes, he did some good things. His numbers were pretty decent. ERA was okay, not the best, but he was able to go to Boston and do some things that really helped Boston. Now, did it translate to postseason success? Not particularly, but I would say that Rick Porcello is an up-and-coming pitcher, and it goes to show you that when we were critiquing Rick Porcello at the time, people would say things like, is this guy a bust? Because he was really a high-ranked prospect when we got him. He was drafted, I think, pretty highly, and is a guy that came up through the Tigers system. And when he came out early on, he was okay, but by the time he left, he had progressed. And some people are making the argument that we might have let go of Rick Porcello a little bit too early. And it does give you pause to say that, pitchers sometimes need a couple seasons in the major leagues to get through rotations, to learn about the day-to-day grind. And dude is relatively young now in his prime. You're going to look at the next 4 years, Rick Porcello is going to be up there as one of the star pitchers in Major League Baseball. But I do agree with the Tigers' decision not to pay him that much money. 100%.
Porcello, I think, had a career aberration. A season that he can't repeat. I don't see him winning 22 games again. Remember, it was not largely, but at least half because of the fact that the Red Sox scored so many runs per game. They give him all that great run support, where JV did not get that on a consistent basis. Like I said, if he would have gotten nearly the run support that Porcello got on a start-to-start basis, Verlander would have won 20, if not 22 like Porcello won this past season. And that's another reason why you could say that Verlander would have or should have won the award. Should have definitely, if you look at it that way. But like I said, Kluber was in the mix, and he was another reason why Verlander was not as likely as maybe some people thought. But he finished number 2 ahead of Kluber, and I would say that's a mini travesty once again. Sorry about that to all you guys who are offended by me saying that about a rival, a guy that pitches for a rival in the AL Central. But that's what I think about Kluber, about Porcello, and about Verlander. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up regarding Verlander before I get into another question that I want to ask you about the Cy Young Award voting by the Baseball Writers Association of America, Doc, and it's about the fact that I think a little bit should be talked about sour grapes being expressed by Kate Upton, by Justin Verlander, who, remember, somebody called out Kate Upton for what she had said on Twitter. Verlander protected his woman, and I guess you got to do that when you're going to be married to that woman soon enough. But I'm thinking, and I'm saying to all of you and to you, Doc, that I think there's a little bit of sour grapes that were expressed, and I get that they should be upset a little bit. But like you said, going about it in the way that Kate Upton expressed it, especially, and with us knowing the fact that Verlander's won the Cy Young Award before, it's not like he doesn't have enough hardware to show, right? Doesn't have enough hardware to his name. It's not like that with Verlander. So I wanted to ask you, is there a little bit of sour grapes going on between the two of them that really shouldn't be out there because of the fact that Verlander has been so highly successful in the past leading up to this? Had been leading up to this past season, Doc.
Yeah, there's things, when you're a public figure that you're probably not supposed to say. She should have come out and defended her man, Justin Verlander, but the way in which she did it leaves room for critique and a lot of criticism. And Justin Verlander, listen, I understand. It's an important award. Justin Verlander is a guy that's ultra competitive. He felt like, based upon the voting, he got the most first place votes. And there's a thing where you kind of feel like, well, within the system, I did the best I could. I got the most first place votes. The other people thought that I was competent enough to win the award, but for the two guys, put him third.
Yeah, put him on the ballot. Not even third, but put him on the ballot. But how do you not place him in the top 3? So I could have seen if you put Porcello as people did number 1. And he got the second most first place votes. But Verlander is the only guy that got double-digit first place votes. That tells you, once again, why Kate Upton expressed what she did on Twitter. Because she thought her man was more than deserving. And when you get that many first place votes, those voters that left him off the ballot were doing something wrong. And that's why they got ridiculed for it, and rightfully so. Now,
but before we get off of Rick Porcello, look at his 2016 stats. 22-4, 3.15 ERA, 33 games appeared with a whip of 1.01. The interesting note, though...
1.01.
Are you questioning me?
I'm looking at Baseball Reference, something else. Sorry.
I'm looking at MLB.com.
I know, you got it. It rounds up. I'm looking. You got it. Go on. Sorry.
And then the interesting note, though, with Porcello is postseason stats. 9 career games in the postseason, 0-3 record with a 5.66 ERA. No wins as of yet in the postseason in 9 games. And very interesting. And this year, because he only pitched 4.1 innings, got an ERA of 10.38. So you got to start questioning Mr. Rick Porcello in the big games, in the biggest of moments, what's going on there. But, Cleveland at that time was the team that was playing the best and got through a couple series there with very few losses. So it's one of those things where I disagree with you in that I do believe Rick Porcello can be a consistent 20-game winner in this league with the stuff that he features. Now, he's not he's developing what we want a lot of pitchers to develop is the art of pitching.
The Jim Price quote there.
Exactly. He had Rick Porcello had 189 strikeouts this year, but what do you know him for? That he's consistently a guy that can get guys out via the ground ball. And, I just think that he's a solid pitcher, and he's only 27 years old. Good stuff, man. He's the real deal. He'll earn that contract in Boston, but for what the Tigers are doing, it's not the numbers that they were looking to pay at the time.
Now, you don't pay him the money that the Red Sox are paying, and you know what? He lived up to the bill this past season, but remember the year in which he got the contract extension from the Bo Sox, which was 2015, his first year with the Red Sox, he wasn't that good. Not even really close to being good on a consistent basis. So this season still kind of came out of nowhere. And you brought up all the strikeouts that he racked up, which was good for him at a $189 in 2016. But Verlander and Kluber had 200-plus Ks on the season. Verlander led the league in strikeouts. Kluber had 227 to show for his name. That's why those guys deserved, once again, to finish ahead of Porcello in the AL Cy Young Award voting. I would have had Kluber, but I have no doubt in my mind that Verlander was still deserving of winning the award. And when you get that many first-place votes, that's why people start expressing the dismay that they did, such as his woman Kate Upton. And maybe she didn't express it, though, in the right way. That's to say the least. Now, Porcello, once again, you brought up the lack of starts that he really has in the postseason. Well, that's because the Tigers' rotation was so deep, they didn't need Porcello to start in the playoffs when he was a member of the Tigers. That kind of tells you, once again, Porcello, at least then, and I still think now to a certain extent, is not the clear-cut Cy Young caliber starting arm that you pay top dollar for. Verlander, even Kluber now, those guys are ones that you pay the top dollar for. Max Scherzer is a guy you pay the top dollar for. David Price, I think, at least more than Rick Porcello, is a guy that you pay the top dollar for, as the Bo Sox did going into 2016 to get him in their rotation. And I still think he's viewed as a top dog in that Bo Sox rotation. No doubt in my mind. Now, Porcello had the better numbers consistently, but Price kind of picked it up in the second half, and he's still the man leading that rotation, even though Porcello won the Cy Young Award. And that kind of tells you something about the discrepancy between the two starting arms, and kind of tells you something about truly what Rick Porcello is. We know what he is, and that's why I think this past season still was a career year that was an aberration, to sum it all up. And you look at the Tigers' rotation when they had him in 2014 here. Porcello was a guy that still not a guy they had to depend on totally, at least. They also had Max Scherzer, Verlander. Those guys were better arms. And they had David Price. So they had all those guys. They had 4 Cy Young Award winners in their rotation in 2014, Doc, and won no playoff games against the Baltimore Orioles. There's a travesty right there. You have to win a playoff game, win a series, when you have all those great starting arms in one rotation. So, and like I said, Porcello was the 4th best guy, and you still had Anibal Sanchez in that rotation. And Verlander didn't have the greatest 2014, remember. Was still struggling there and looked like he was on the downside of his career. But still, with all the career accolades garnered by those guys leading up to 2014, you had to say that Porcello, best case scenario, even with his ERA, how good it was in 2014, was the 4th best guy. And that just tells you, once again, it was a travesty the Tigers never got it done. And you started getting at that, Doc, as well earlier in this podcast. And it is true. And people have brought it up ad nauseum on Twitter recently because Porcello just won that Cy Young Award. The Tigers didn't get it done, and now it's all on them. The blame is all on their shoulders for not getting it done because they were stacked in that rotation especially and had a good enough lineup. So the only ones we can blame, the only ones the Tigers can blame, are themselves truly. That really is it. And wanted to ask you really quick, I know we've talked about this now a long time here, but voting for these 4 major annual awards that the BBWAA votes for. Now, do you think that these writers should be allowed to vote for these awards, such as the Cy Young, Doc? What is your opinion on that?
Man, it's a tough question because they have a lot of experience. They know a lot of baseball. There's a lot of history in terms of some of these baseball writers. I just think maybe there's a better way of voting in terms of tabulating the votes. Maybe you make more first-place votes weighted significantly a lot more, or you do some things where if it's a situation where a vote like this happens, where obviously Justin Verlander didn't deserve to be left off of ballots, then you decide that these 2 writers potentially could face some consequences where they don't get to vote further for postseason awards or awards in Major League Baseball if they show significant outliers in terms of voting and things like that. But I agree that they should. I like what writers do. I agree that. Or what you could do is also mix in a vote in terms of maybe general managers. You mix in a couple other factors that weighs into it, and then you can get a consensus. You know how kind of college football does it now with the AP poll and then the coaches poll. You kind of have a couple different factors, and then I think you could also just add, general managers or players or things like that. Some people might argue that you just make it a vote for the players. But for me, I like the writer's input, but I just maybe think that you could add others' input as well in the voting factor.
Now, did you hear about who won the AL MVP award? Mike Trout. Second time winning it, and he deserved to win before, and I think it was almost like redemption. The voters felt bad and felt he needed to win a second AL MVP by this time in his career, and they gave him the most first-place votes. So the guy with the most first-place votes for the American League MVP won the most valuable player in the American League, as it should be, as Verlander, based on the first-place votes, should have won the award. Trout did for the MVP. And if you look at this, it all came out, I think, correctly, the way it should have. And it's because of the fact that Mookie Betts, Jose Altuve, the guys that finished 2 and 3 respectively for the American League Most Valuable Player Award, finished Betts with the most second place votes, and Altuve with the most third place votes. So all is right in the world when it comes to the MVP voting this season in the American League. And I think Trout won it. He had a great year, but you have to also factor in that the Angels didn't have a great season as a ball club. Finished well under 500, out of the playoffs. Should that affect the voting by BBWAA members that vote for these awards, Doc? If your team does not do well and misses out on the playoffs, should that affect a guy such as Trout?
No, I just think the timing is perfect. Do you disagree that Mike Trout's not the most valuable player on that team?
Well, think about this. My brother brought up a good point. My brother, Dominic Chirco, who's been on this podcast, graced us with his presence many times now. He said, well, look at what the Halos would have been without Trout. They would have been like the worst team in baseball, and they weren't that. So he still had a major effect, major impact on the Halos this past season. So I think he deserved the award, and because of this as well. Not only because of the fact that I think voters felt bad for not already having given him a second MVP award, because he already had the one before winning it here for his efforts in 2016. And I think also it's because of this fact, Doc. I think they saw that Mookie Betts and Jose Altuve, great players who had great seasons, but really they're not as standoutish. They're not as superstar caliber of ball players as Mike Trout. And in so many words, with that being said, Betts and Altuve aren't as sexy of names. Trout is that sexy ball player, and I'm not talking about his looks. Men and women out there listening into this podcast right now. I'm talking about his production, his high quality of play, his 5 tools as a ball player. Betts and Altuve don't really offer that to a ball club. And Betts almost does, Altuve almost does, but they don't hit, Altuve especially doesn't hit for the big power numbers. And people look for the run producers too. And that's sexy in today's game, right? It's the reason why you get voted as the most valuable player. And Trout offers more of that than Altuve, and still more of that than Betts at this point in Betts' career and in Trout's career. So I think Trout, he deserved to win it, but I could have seen if Betts won it, Doc. But I think they did pick the right guy to win the most valuable player. And we'll leave that Cy Young discussion for another day, as we've already, I think, expressed more than enough about that and about how maybe Porcello didn't deserve it totally, but the voters didn't get it right, but the voters got it right in so many words for the most valuable player.
Yeah, just looking here online, a lot of people are also talking about the point system, where you select and rank the top 5 pitchers, and points are assigned from first to fifth, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. As we saw last week, it creates a situation where first place votes get kind of dispersed a little bit, and it doesn't mean that if you get the most first place votes, it would necessarily tally into the most points. So relooking and reevaluating the point system will also help to mitigate what's going on. Like we said, they can always make improvements, and I think based upon what happened, I think they'll look at making some changes.
I think the time has come for it. And I think Buster Olney, because a guy like that is writing about it, ESPN MLB insider, if he's writing about it, well, that tells you how the time has come to improve the system, Doc.
Like I said earlier, more weight should be given to first place votes. More points should be assigned, and that situation where a guy like Justin Verlander, who gets the most first place votes, should have a significant lead over a guy like Rick Porcello. And that's how it should be.
Absolutely. Who he beat, I believe, once again, it was 14-8 in first place votes, right? So, I mean, that tells you enough right there. Yeah, it was 14-8, and Porcello got the most second place votes, and he finished number 1. There's nothing wrong with that, and we can dive more into that topic later on future episodes of Tigers Talk. But for right now, let's take a quick commercial break on Tigers Talk, and when we get right back after that, we'll talk about Miguel Cabrera, and how about him being traded to Rick Porcello's team, the Boston Red Sox. We'll talk about that after this commercial break on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Hey guys, it's Vito Chirco from Top Cat Sales in downtown Royal Oak. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or your corporation? Well, if so, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, your school, or your club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, Top Cat's website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember, do yourself a favor and follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter at Team Top Cat. And back on episode 67 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and company. And Doc, we have to talk about Miguel Cabrera, the latest regarding him being traded, and maybe to Rick Porcello's current team in the Boston Red Sox. Dave Dombrowski's current team in the Boston Red Sox. Now, once again, as we've talked about ad nauseum in the past about Miguel Cabrera or Justin Verlander being dealt, it would take a huge coup of young players for it to happen because it's not going to be worth it for the Tigers just to dump the salary of Cabrera or Verlander. They need a great return to make it happen. And the Red Sox have that great farm system intact, though, to make it happen. But now the argument being made by people saying the Red Sox shouldn't make the move for Miguel Cabrera is a fact. Well, they could sign Edwin Encarnacion in free agency to be their DH to replace Big Papi. And also giving up all those young players, prospects of the Red Sox to get Miguel Cabrera. You know, he's on the wrong side of 30 now, and he's been hurt recently. Is it totally worth it to deal with that big of an albatross of a contract and future seasons when they've got to resign their own players, Doc, for big money, like Mookie Betts, Jackie Bradley Jr.? How about resigning all of those guys, which might be very tough if you also have Miguel Cabrera on your payroll?
See, a lot of fans are looking at it very emotionally and looking at it like, how do you give away a Miguel Cabrera? What's the impact going to be if he leaves that lineup? How does, letting go of a guy who hits 25 home runs plus 80 to 100 RBIs a season, a guy that is the, bona fide leader of the squad, kind of the personality of the team, how do you just let that go? And I would argue that, you got to look at it a little bit more objectively. If they do it, I would not be as angry if the Hall produced one or two solid day-to-day players and they're young players that can produce in a couple years to help this team when they're fully ready to make a championship run. Now, that means that I would not accept anything less than one of their top three prospects. So you need to go out there and, discuss things with Dave Dombrowski. And remember that Dave Dombrowski knows Al Avila, and Al Avila knows Dave Dombrowski. And Dave Dombrowski hasn't been known to trade guys that have been productive later on in their careers. You look at Jacob Turner, you look at other guys in the Tigers organization who they let go of to get these players that they built throughout the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and later on. Dave Dombrowski didn't give away anybody from the Tiger system that made you go, yet they were able to acquire such great talent. So I would be leery of what Dave Dombrowski offers, and that's why I'm just not really looking to trade with Boston. I'm looking to trade, but they have, I liked what Houston was presenting because they got a plethora. And when you look at their organization, them, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, Yankees, they all rank pretty highly right now in terms of their minor league system. So it's going to be very important who the trade partner is and what you get back in return.
And you know what? You got to also look at the fact, like you said already, Doc, that really, Dombrowski has pillaged teams in the past, hasn't he? With what he's gotten in return for guys that he's given up that haven't panned out long term. Now, that was him with the Tigers. They didn't have as great of farm systems, I remember, in Motown when he was there. In Beantown, a lot better high-end prospects that they can deal to get Miguel Cabrera or the like of a Miguel Cabrera. So a guy that is a big name that has that big-time reputation as a major league performer already. So I kind of still feel like if you were going to deal Cabrera, you could do it with the Bo Sox. I think it would be worth your while. But there's also this. Weren't Dombrowski and Al Avila not talking? Do they have to come to the Thanksgiving table and reunite and maybe start thinking about how, well, at one point at least, they were thankful of each other, right? Of what they contributed to each other and forming that dynamic duo in the Tigers front office? Because it seems like it hasn't been that way since Dombrowski left to go to Beantown. And the way, remember, we talked about this ad nauseum before we broke it down. You gave your psychologist point of view and you said, well, they kind of, have to talk it out. I mean, to mend the fences. Thing is, if they haven't been by this point, can there even be a deal at this point?
Do you really think that Al Avila and Dave Dombrowski will take personal issues with each other and allow that?
Absolutely.
You think that would affect their ability? No, it
can't. Oh, why would it? They're too good of front office executives to make that come in the way of a trade happening, and such as this too.
That would be unbelievable if Dave Dombrowski tried to stiff Al Avila.
Yeah, he said, we're not buddies anymore, so we're not doing this trade.
If that were to happen, then Al Avila should release who Dave Dombrowski offered for Miguel Cabrera and be like, this is what we were offering.
Screw him.
Exactly. There's no love lost there probably, but I really do believe that after a year, they both are in high profile positions. I think the time and the position that Dave Dombrowski's in will allow him to really let the bygones be bygones. Dude, he's at Boston. He's a general manager of the Boston Red Sox, one of the storied franchises, can write a check basically at will and do whatever he's got to do. When he first got there, he started unloading young talent and picked up some relievers and things like that. So Dave Dombrowski's not hurting when he left the Detroit Tigers. It wasn't like he left and then went away to obscurity. He got a good job, and Al Avila and him should work professionally, and they can put the differences aside, and they don't have to call each other and text each other. And you never know. They could have mended fences by now.
Doc, as you know, Thanksgiving is coming up, rapidly approaching on Thursday of this week, and it is a time to be thankful, right? You are thankful of your family and other things, and I am as well. And how about the Hall of Fame voters? Do you think they'll be thankful for what Pudge Rodríguez did in his Major League Baseball career with the Rangers, with the Tigers, the Marlins, all those great seasons he had where he hit like a monster? He has the most hits recorded of any catcher in Major League Baseball history. Already has that stat to his name. That kind of makes you, well, not kind of, but typically makes you a Hall of Famer and a first ballot Hall of Famer. But will the Hall of Fame be thankful for what he did, or will they bring up the PED stuff that has come to kind of put a black eye on his name and what he did as a major leaguer, Doc?
Well, here's the couple factors that everyone has to know about. Pudge Rodríguez was never formally disciplined for PEDs, but the allegations started to show up when, obviously he showed up all puffy, and then in one offseason, he came back, and everybody noticed when he was in the locker room, and the media in town was like, you look like a totally different dude compared to what you looked like last offseason, and he got a little bit defensive, and I remember him specifically trying to really put out there that the media was questioning him for PEDs, and it really came to light from the book Juiced from Jose Canseco, a very interesting book, a book that I own, is in my possession, and it's a great book. If you go out there and can find it, titled Juiced from Jose Canseco.
Are we pubbing a Jose Canseco book now? By the way, one that I have too. I've read some of it. Yeah.
And in that book, Jose Canseco comes out and says, I stuck the needle in Pudge's ass.
Oh yeah, who wouldn't want to do that? I'm so jealous of Jose Canseco for being able to get that honor doing that. Man, what an honor. Anyways.
But, Pudge Rodríguez was always good with the media. He's got good numbers. I mean, 14-time All-Star, 13-time Gold Glove, AL MVP in 2008 with Texas. He was part of a World Series team with the Florida Marlins in 2003 and was MVP of the National League Championship Series. So it's going to be incumbent upon the baseball writers really to be consistent, because they have kind of been known to keep players that a lot of people have thought of highly out of the Hall of Fame, including Roger Clemens, Mark McGwire, but a guy that also, when you look at the other side, a guy that we all thought maybe was going to be delayed and be punished by the baseball writers, Mike Piazza.
Yep.
But he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. I'm also curious to see if Manny Ramirez is going to be voted into the Hall of Fame. I don't think so.
2 times suspended for PEDs, I believe it is. He will not be inducted into the Hall of Fame anytime soon. Now, Vladimir Guerrero is also up for Hall of Fame induction, and he was a great fielder and hitter. Now, Manny Ramirez has the World Series hardware to his name, but Vlad was a better all-around outfielder in many aspects. So I would say he's more deserving, and because of the lack of PED allegations to his name, he's more deserving in suspensions than Manny Ramirez, who was a clown out there. And I think some voters, well, not only because of the suspensions that Manny Ramirez endured through, but also because of his on-field antics, I think will not even come close to voting for Man Ram. So, and I think rightfully so once again, and because of the PED suspensions. It shouldn't be because of what he was like on the field, how he was in the clubhouse. That should be just totally disregarded. Okay? And voters that really bring that up into the equation for whether or not they vote for a guy, I think that's wrong, Doc. What do you think about that aspect being taken into account by voters?
No, I mean, it plays into a part, and baseball writers have been notorious for taking things personally and also looking at the concept of a guy's behavioral pattern. They looked at ethics, and so it's not something that's really new. You can debate it, whether you agree with it or not. I think the Hall of Fame should be something where you look at least how a player behaved, how did they carry themselves, but I don't think it should be weighted more than the numbers. If a guy puts up similar Hall of Fame numbers than other guys, then it's not, like I said, the Hall of Great Behaviors. It's the Hall of Fame based upon your performance on the field. Off the field is one where a lot of subjective things can come into play, and I don't think it should be weighted too much, but it can have some weight. You can just, put that as a factor, but it shouldn't outweigh the numbers and what a guy does on the field. And so that's why the debate where we look at it the most is in regards to Pete Rose. And I think I've said on many occasions that I think Pete Rose definitely probably with the betting on his own team.
Definitely, probably.
I think that...
what do you mean? Probably or definitely?
No, I was probably looking at that at this point in time, he should not be in the Hall of Fame. But people are debating it back and forth that he's got the great numbers and he is somebody that people have rallied behind and said, hey, put him in the Hall of Fame. But you should weigh... My opinion is you should weigh personality and off-the-field antics, but not as much as what they did on the field.
Two other long-tenured Tigers are up for the Hall of Fame coming up here, Doc. They are Carlos Guillen and Max Ordonez. So I think, now I wanted to ask you too, but I think Ordonez is more deserving of a spot if one of the two was to be inducted, and neither will be, by the way, guys. I'm not trying to advocate for one of the two, but I'm saying who's more deserving from their days with the Tigers? I would say Max, who won a batting title. He hit .363 in 2007, Maglio Ordonez. And he made, let's see right here, 6 All-Star games. I know Guillen, he did make a few, but Ordonez had more of the career accolades and the numbers that really stand out to you than Carlos Guillen, who was really just a steady Freddie, everyday player that just got his job done. Maglio had more of the flair for the dramatic. Well, think about what he did in the 06 ALCS, winning the ALCS for the Tigers to get to their first World Series appearance since '84, Doc. So I would say Maglio of the two deserves a spot more. How about you? Now, neither, once again, are going to get in, but if you had to vote for one of the two with a gun to your head, who would you pick of Ordonez and then Carlos Guillen?
No, I would definitely pick Maglio Ordonez because what a historic moment to get your Detroit Tigers ball club into the World Series. What an iconic moment. You're exactly right. I don't think both of those guys will ever get to a spot where they'll earn enough. But if it's between those two, I think Maglio did a lot more for the Detroit Tigers than Carlos Guillen did. Carlos was really a solid role player.
A steady player, right?
A steady player, a good force, a good leader in that locker room. Remember that nice fight that he had?
With Jared Weaver, remember that? That was epic.
That was nice, solid. But, Maglio, what a memory. I mean, people still to this day remember what they were doing, where they were when he hit that home run off of Oakland. Boom, Game 4, 9th inning, bottom of the 9th. It's what everybody dreams about.
Let's play a game really quick here, Doc, of Big Vito's over-under. And I wanted to ask your opinion on whether or not Manny Ramirez, Vladimir Guerrero, and Pudge Rodríguez get in on the first ballot, as first ballot Hall of Famers, that is. Now, over under 50% on all those three guys. So first with Man Ram.
Man Ram, under 50%.
I say well under 50% too, by the way, on Man Ram. Vladimir Guerrero.
First ballot, under 50%. He might garner more when people look deeper into those kind of numbers because he was a solid player. Hall of Famer, less than borderline.
I say over 50% on the first ballot, but I don't think he'll get in at the same time. Pudge Rodríguez. Doc.
The marquee name. Do the writers decide to put the speculation and the innuendo that he took PEDs? Do they believe Jose Canseco? I will say over 50%.
Really? On his first try?
55% that he gets in on the first try.
I say under. I say like 35 to 45%. Like I said, I think Man Ram will only garner about 15%, honestly. And Vladimir Guerrero, I think, will get to about 55%. So he's the only one that I deem will be over that 50% threshold. And Doc, thank you for playing Big Vito's over-under. You get no prize, as usual. No prize is given to any of our competitors, as usual. Doc, and as usual, thank you very much for all your time. It was a guestless podcast, but a good one at that, where we talked about Verlander and the Cy Young Award voting in the American League, the AL MVP. We talked about Pudge, PEDs, Man Ram, Vladimir Guerrero, Carlos Guillen, Maglio Ordonez, and much more. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we've got to be thankful that we just have this platform, to speak about sports and about, on this very podcast, about the Tigers in Major League Baseball.
And I'm thankful that you hustled this week, finally living up to the paycheck they were giving you as the PR director. Getting out there this Saturday, look for Vito's coverage of the big marquee matchup, MHSAA football high school finals, Cass Tech versus Catholic Central. Definitely a marquee matchup. You'll be providing coverage. Look for podcasts. Look for a feature article from the Vito Jerome Chirco. Very good stuff. I'm proud of you. You'll be at Ford Field representing the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and others have weighed in and very happy and excited to meet up with you when you get up there. So it's good. It's nice. People are, genuinely knowing about what we're doing, and they're excited to say what's up to the Vito with the nice Michigan Valiant brand. And okay, I'll take advantage of this. Over under 50% in 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have the nice Block M suit to rock on a Tuesdays with Vito.
You would love to see me rocking that. I want to rock it. I don't think before the holidays are over. I think after.
After the new year?
I think come January, whatever, I think I'll have that suit jacket.
Why?
And the thing is, I haven't put my foot to the pedal about getting the suit jacket in that he can actually measure to see what size my suit jacket. And the Valiant, Block M for the maize and blue suit jacket, and how it, what size it should be. So I guess it's on me too, and now it's on me to get the ball rolling so I can actually, get that nice suit jacket from Valiant for the maize and blue color
if
scheme.
they're offering it to you, don't be passive. Don't. I'm starting to think that what Steve writes about you being all Hollywood and above us all.
It is starting to get to my head, you think? Is Steve right?
Get on it. Let's go. I think it's something that'll look nice on our videos. It'll look nice on the platform that we have here. They want to don you in that nice Michigan Block M. What are you going to do? Wait until after Michigan loses to Ohio State?
Oh, wow. Are you calling that already? Is that your prediction?
Yeah. Michigan's going to lose.
Really?
So you're going to wait
Get it right to it.
You're going to wait till all you can wait till the stock is down to wear your Michigan gear. Good stuff, Vito. Good timing.
I'll put the stock back up because I'll be wearing that lovely suit jacket from Valiant. And with that, Doc, thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, as usual, and tune in next week to episode 68 of Tigers Talk. Have a great one and a very, very happy Thanksgiving.